Hi everyone and welcome to another episode of ParentTown TV. Tonight I have Dr. Khoo with me from the Preschool of Multiple Intelligences, and we're going to be talking about what else? Multiple intelligences. So tune in. If you have your questions, go onto the ParentTown app and ask your questions, and we'll ask it while the live session is going on. So Dr. Khoo, thank you so much for joining us here tonight.
My pleasure.
So tell me a little bit about yourself. Are you a mom? Or do you have children, grandchildren?
Yep. I have a son and two grandsons, and they are all unfortunately in Melbourne, so I don't get to see them as often as I wish to. But I make up for it by having two preschools for multiple intelligences.
Oh, so that's a lot of children.
And that's about 150 children, so that kind of make up for it. So yeah, more or less.
Oh, so how did you get interested in multiple intelligences?
Well, I've been in this area of early childhood education for a long time. It's education and development for a long time. In fact, I started my interest when I did my PhD dissertation on cognitive interpersonal problem solving for 5-year-old children here. So that got me started, and because I was interested in looking at how we can prevent problems of children and parents from occurring. Because at that time, during my time, the childcare centres were really more custodial in care, and there were no training available. So
How many years ago was this?
That was in 80s.
80s, okay.
1980s. And we hear of parents getting quite upset with their 2-year-old because when they refuse to do certain things, they felt that this 2-year-old is deliberately out to get me, just to make me mad, and therefore I have to discipline him. And the discipline sometimes become really too harsh when it's physical, and then the child either becomes very withdrawn and refuses to speak, or the child becomes very defiant. And when he becomes defiant, the parents gets even more agitated and starts attacking the child further, and we have a vicious cycle going on. But if parents know that at a certain stage, children behave in a certain way because they are testing the boundaries, and they do not know, and they need to know what are the boundaries, and to be told in a gentle way why they can't do certain things and why it's not appropriate and what might be a better thing to do. So that, as well as the teachers also need to understand it, because as training was not really available at the time, I see the need for me to enter into this early child field, which is then the NTUC childcare. They were the major provider of childcare, not only childcare, for working parents especially, blue-collar workers. And that's how it started, working with teacher training, working with parents, working with the children.
And how did you get involved in multiple intelligences?
Okay, that started later on when I discovered Howard Gardner, who is a professor in Harvard University, when he came up with this theory, and from his research, that all of us have not just IQ, which has to do with mainly 2 or 3 intelligences, and there is more a testing for how well you do in school, preparation for school. So, but it doesn't look at other things that children do very well, and which needs intelligence in real life to do a good job, either in terms of coming up with something like, say, a piece of art. All right, that is a product. So that needs an intelligence of spatial intelligence to be able to do that. Or if the child is very good in terms of in the sports field, all right, it needs a physical intelligence to be able to maneuver certain things. Or even a mime artist that needs facial expression, and that is control of the facial muscles as well. So there are different intelligences that comes about. And for me, the most important thing is that it gives every child a chance to be intelligent. If we say only those with high IQ are intelligent and the rest are all mediocre, it's not fair, it's not right, and only those with high IQ in that dimension of logical, mathematical, and linguistic, and to some extent spatial intelligence, would be regarded as intelligent children, and the others are either moderate or below average.
But if that's the case, and if that was so important, then why is it that in our school systems here, we just mostly seem to be focused on academic intelligence?
For a long, long time, we have actually been going down that path.
Mm-hmm.
But if you notice, fairly recently, we came up first with the sports school, right? That is the bodily-kinesthetic intelligence. We came up with the art school, NAPFA and all that, all right? The recognition is there. And now entry in the schools, we consider all the other things that you have besides the IQ component of it, the school results. And Even then, you'll notice that it is still the academic, the logical, mathematical, and the linguistic intelligence that is more predominant. You must have this up to a certain level, then you consider all the others as well. So it hasn't come on the same level, the same par as the other intelligences that goes into school performance.
Okay, so we're talking already quite a lot about the different types of multiple intelligences, but maybe we should go back into basics. What are multiple intelligences?
Okay, Gardner found that we actually, from his research, and they must meet certain criteria, that we have 8 intelligences at the moment, he has found, that is innate in us. That means every one of us have these 8 intelligences innate in us. So even all of us now as adults, it's still there. And you may or may not have tapped into it. So it's a good thing to know that, hey, I may have something here. Perhaps I need to bring it up a little bit more. I want to do this as a child, but I never got to do it. So this is something that might get parents interested, not only for children, but also for yourself. And so the 8 intelligences they found are, I mentioned, logical, mathematical. That means if you're good in math, science, cause-effect thinking, logical thinking. So if you're a scientist, or mathematicians, if you're researchers, if you're an IT folk, if you are a CEO has to have a strong logical, mathematical intelligence. Whether it is from development, from where you were before because it was not very high, or you're already very strong in that, you're coming and it's very easy for you to do all those things. And linguistic intelligence. Linguistic intelligence has to do with speaking well, being persuasive, being able to write well, and being in tune with words and the nuances of words that you read. So that's linguistic, and of course it's very important. And if you can speak well, you can persuade, you can understand a lot more things, that is very helpful to be also strong in that area. And then spatial intelligence has to do with, sometimes it's called visual spatial, seeing things. So it's like an architect. We see a plan, 2-dimensional plan. This architect see a whole building, inside, outside, on interior decorated. They can come in and say, hey, this room can do with this color, that sort of furnishing, that sort of pictures. And you look a whole lot better if you listen to me because I can see it. But for us who can't, we'll have to move furniture or get our husband or boyfriend to move our furniture around to put up this curtain or this kind of picture because you can't visualize as much to do that. Spatial intelligence also means ability to know, have a sense of where you are, like finding your way around. So, and guys are supposed to be much better in terms of looking at the maps, finding their way around. And women are supposed to be not so good, but we can be trained to be good or better, finding a way around, because I've got people who got lost from one end of Orchard Road to the other end of Orchard Road, and they end up in River Valley. So don't ask me why. And kids who have strong spatial intelligence can tell the mommy, I know, mommy, where you hid my favorite cookie is on the left corner on the top shelf next to the blue box. Right? So that it's in the mind, being able to visualize that.
So if your kids say statements like that, then you can just basically conclude that
you can say, that's interesting. Let's see what more you can do, and stuff like that. Yeah. So
that's spatial. What else is there?
Then there is musical intelligence, musicality, tone, pitch, rhythm, and it's not only from man-made music, but it's also from the sounds around us. And musical intelligence starts really, really early compared to all the other intelligences, and that's when you hear your baby who's even just about standing up, moving to music. When you play music, it starts moving around or smiling and swaying back and forth, and in time, in rhythm to the music that is being played. So that kind of gives you a clue. You can say, oh, I've got a dancer here. But you kind of want to expose the child a little bit more to music or to instruments and see how she plays with it. Basically make available other resources that might make her more interested to kind of play around with sounds. Then there is what I consider very fundamental, very important, is the inter and intrapersonal intelligence. Intrapersonal intelligence has to do with self-knowledge, self-awareness, self-confidence, and self-management and self-control to do that. And interpersonal has to do with relationship, being able to get along with all types of people, to be able to solve interpersonal problems. And even in my dissertation, I would ask the kids, if you want to play with that toy or on that swing, what would you do? And the kids would come with all different solutions. It could from push the kid off the ground, tell him the mommy is out there waiting for him, telling a lie, tell him or bribe him, I'll give you a cake if you let me play with that first, or you'll be my friend, so on and so forth. But this is solving problem. And it's not a case of whether it's right or wrong, but just thinking out. And later on they say, well, is that a good idea? What do you think will happen if you do this? Push the child off the ground, off the swing. or tell him that the mommy is there when the mommy is not there. So the child begins to then analyze, oh, that's not a good idea at all, because if I do that, he'll hurt himself, he'll cry, and then he'll complain to the teacher, and the teacher will come and scold me. All right, so they will kind of come back to that. So that is the interpersonal, knowing how to solve problems, how to get along with different types of people. And for preschoolers and toddlers, learning in a safe environment, in a little society, how to share. Because every child, not is a single child, when they go to a center, it's like, I'm a princess at home, I'm a prince. Yeah, so you are, but here, everybody's a prince and everybody's a princess. So then they learn how to give and take, they learn how to share. Some will come very easily because they have it stronger in them, and they can empathize. They see a child crying, they will feel sad, or they may cry, or they'll ask the teacher to look at the child, or they go and tell the child, no, don't cry, I'll give the child something. Others who don't have that as much will just stand and stare, and then walk away. But that child who doesn't have as much interpersonal intelligence can learn how to comfort another child through behavior, and slowly they'll learn how to be more stronger, show a stronger sense of empathy, and be able to console and befriend other children.
And so, what's the last intelligence?
Then last two is bodily-kinesthetic. That is gross motor, fine motor, balance, coordination. So children need to really go out and do all these things. So people who are athletic, people who work with their hands, sculpture, even painter, and people who are good seamstress, anything that deal with the hands itself very well, can do extremely well. Like this guy who's able to paint on a grain of rice and artwork. That takes a lot of bodily kinesthetic intelligence as well as spatial intelligence. So example of things like that. And I also want to mention that bodily kinesthetic is very important because that is connected also with brain development. Movement does. I only worry when kids want to sit quietly and not move. The more they move, the more different things they do with their bodies, the more it affects the development of the brain, apart from being more coordinated. And the last one is naturalistic intelligence, nature. And nature is actually the beginning ground for the young scientists. When they ask, like, what's that? What's that crawling on the ground? How's it got 5 legs? Because one fell off, apparently. And one has got 8 legs. And what can they do? Why are they behaving this way? Where do they go? And so on and so forth. So a child's interest starts, and nature itself offers a lot of experiences for children on finding out questions, answers, where, what, when, and follow up by going to the library to look at the books and to increase their knowledge. So that is a very, very good thing for children to develop as well.
Oh, fantastic.
So it has that, covers all 8 intelligences.
Okay. And at what age do kids start showing signs of multiple intelligences?
I think it depends, that's why it's important for parents to observe the children, and not just push them from one program, one enrichment program to another.
But are we talking straight from infancy, baby stage?
We have to observe, okay, we've talked about how can we nurture children's intelligences, right? The first thing that you can do, and which is very fundamental, is that inter and intrapersonal intelligence. So you start by, babies are actually very intelligent, although they seem to be physically helpless. And that is one of the strategies to get you to pay attention to them. So when you carry them, you talk to them, you can see that they're actually watching you, they're observing you, they're listening to you, they're looking at your mouth, right? And then to start a conversation, like, you talk to them, and sometimes parents say, "What, they don't understand?" Doesn't matter, all right? You'll be surprised. Talk to them, say some words, and they will answer back. They will say, you say, "So how are you today, my dear?" And the child will go, goo, goo. All right? That's their baby talk that you haven't learned yet, okay? So, and the mother said, "Wow, it's good to see you're looking so happy." And the child will say, "Da, da, dee, dee." So that is a communication. That is a turn-taking, right? That is a conversation, right? You don't monopolize the conversation. You say something, the other person says something, and it's a back and forth, back and forth. And when you smile at the child, that is the social part of it. And the child smiles at you, right? That is the social interaction coming back and forth. And when you respond to a child, when the child needs you, when it's hungry, when it's thirsty, when it's uncomfortable, the child knows that you can trust. Development, a sense of trust. So that has to do with intrapersonal. I am confident, I feel good because I can trust this person who responds to me and who is caring and loving and carries me about. Okay? So even at that stage, when you walk around with a baby in your arm and you talk about what you see in the garden, in your house, the child is listening. You put a child in any cultural environment, the child will pick up. A Chinese child can pick up Swahili language. A Swahili child can pick up Mandarin in the Chinese language. So it depends on where the child is and what the exposure is for the child. So the more you speak to the child, and if you want a bilingual family, a bilingual child, then mom can speak perhaps to the child in Mandarin, and dad could perhaps speak to the child in English. So that will be, from the start, you're already introducing the child to a bilingual environment. And the child get used to it. Say, oh, okay, this person here speaks to me this sound. I eventually will associate the sound with this person. So if you have two, and if you have a maid from Philippines to speak in Filipino to the Philippines, I think to Tagalog to the child, then the child will also begin to associate that. And as this grows on, the child will begin to associate. And when the time comes for the child to speak, the child is already having that languages in her mind, in her brain. It's just that she's physically not able to articulate those sounds. But when she can, you'll be surprised. Where did she get that from? And it's all inside. It's just waiting to come out.
So can a child be strong in more than one multiple intelligence?
Absolutely, it can be strong in one or two or even more. And that's where, if you know the child, and you may not know that unless you expose the child to different environments. So in a home, and I must say that if you're going to buy any toys, the most important and the most useful toy for a child is a parent. Right? And you don't need batteries for that.
Right.
Okay? And because a parent can do so many things for the child that no toy can do. You can talk, you can stimulate the child, you can sing to the child, you can tell stories.
But that's not always the ideal situation in Singapore where both parents are working. So
no, but you can make it a point to spend that time. So instead of saying like, okay, send the child, even though I'm free, I think the child should go for this class or that class, and you keep on sending to different classes, then you don't have time for the child. So whatever time you have, you can do things with the child. All right, you can sing with the child. You don't have to do that the whole 24/7. You just need pockets of time to do those things.
So in a day, how many hours or how many minutes should a parent be spending with the child?
It's not a matter of minutes. Like for instance, in the morning when you wake up and you're together, you wish your child good morning, give the child a hug, and maybe talk to the child and say, hey, what are you doing today? What's going on? And we can say, okay, we read from the papers. Oh my goodness, look at this. There's something new going on here. There is this beautiful flower they found. So stuff like that along the way you talk, and it could be a few minutes here, a few minutes there. Catch it as you can. All right. So don't think that, I can't spend one whole hour. Don't think of hours. Where you can, you just make it a habit to talk, to communicate, to bring the child out, to go to the park, to play in the ground, to bring the magnifying glass with you when you go to the park or to the gardens to check things out.
So every parent should have a magnifying glass at home.
It's always good to put in the pocket.
A pocket, okay. Okay. And what are the activities besides just walking around with your child and talking to your child? What other activities can you do?
You can play music to the child, sing to the child. You can, depending on the age of the child. If the child is old enough, then you can go and cycle together. You can run. You can play games, physical games. You can play ball. You can play catch. You can play with bubbles to do that. And talk about it. You can if you have fish or pets at home, but be able to make sure that you take good care of it. There's so many things, and you say whatever it is, parent can do it most of the time.
Okay.
Do that.
Are there any real benefits to introducing things like flashcards?
I really do not like the idea of flashcards. Why? Because it's so impersonal. I would rather that you read to the child. And in the book with the pictures, and the kids love pictures, and even though they don't see the words, talk to about the pictures. All right, when you talk to the pictures, the child hears the word, the child sees the pictures and makes a connection. Okay, and for an older child, you can have books with big words, right? And then you can say, oh, this is a duck here. See that the word duck is here, and he sees the word duck, rather than flashing. So it is, to me, it's meaningless. I think our interaction with children needs to be meaningful. For children to have a meaningful relationship with you, not with the cards, not with the computer, but with you, with a person, real life person that is a significant other. So it could be a grandparent, it could be parents, it could be a care provider, it could be the teachers to do that. So that is more meaningful, and there's so many things that kids need to learn at this age. Computers can come later. In school, they'll be swarmed with computers, IT stuff, swarmed with them. But this age is so many things for them to learn. And I also want to emphasize that intelligences are neutral. You can use intelligence for good or for bad. So even interpersonal, right? You can be so good at your interpersonal skills. you can swindle somebody to give you something against their will, you know. And you have many swindlers there and scammers who are so glib of tongue, and they are so smart, and they use it to cheat people, to make people's life miserable. So to accompany that, values is so important, because values will help the child decide what is the best thing I can do with this intelligence I have. So that intelligence must come with the teaching of values, and that's why in PMI we always combine these two things, these two anchor, MI and values. So we find out what a child's intelligence might be, expose all the child exposed to different intelligences or activities that stimulate intelligence. But we know that a child will veer towards one that is strong at, another will veer towards another. But because they're exposed to all the intelligence or different ways of doing things, they say, oh, I love doing this, it's so easy. Like, for instance, example is learning about numbers. So one way of doing it through language would be, okay, we're going to read a story about the 5 little monkeys, all right? So they read the story, so that's a linguistic part of it. And we can also dramatize it out. We can also sing and dramatize it. So they sing 5 little monkeys jumping on the bed. And then there is also the action part of it of counting, you know. One fell off and then bumped his head, so how many left? So that is the counting part of it. And then there is a physical part, bodily-kinesthetic part. So there are few intelligences are involved. So it will strike as many children as possible when we use different ways of learning numbers.
Okay. Well, we've got 2 more questions before we end out. And so we've got a question from a dad here who's asked, should we double down on an intelligence innate in the child or try to fan it out and develop the child where he's weaker at?
Sometimes you feel that, oh, this child is so bad at, you know, this math, for instance. No? We must really send for tuition and second tuition and so on and so forth until the kids really, really hate it very much. All right? We normally focus on our strength because it's what gives us a sense of confidence and self-esteem. Yeah, we can do this one. We are really good at it. And, you know, we get recognition, all right, because we do well. And then we are forced to do something we are weak at, all right, and say, no, it's not good enough. It's very bad. You have to really, really learn very hard. And you have to sit down for an hour at least to make sure you do it again and again until you really get it. So the child is like, I really not very strong and I hate it and I have to do this again and again. And there will be a reaction, all right, and the kids will hate it. So you can expose the child to it, encourage the child, but don't overdo it. Don't double up on that. Especially double up. Being exposed is one thing, encouraging is one thing. But to learn something, you can use the other thing to do it. For instance, if a child is not good in math, you can use music to teach math in a different way. All right? And if it's a child's interest is in music, for instance, or if it is in art. So that's what we do in PMI, to use different intelligence to teach something in an area where the child does not like or has really resistant to it, to teach that. But most of the kids are actually quite open and quite happy to try different things. But if it comes to that situation where the dad is concerned about, then don't push it. Don't push it. Use different ways of doing it.
We've got the last question from Mom Geraldine Tan here, who says the Gardner's model of multiple intelligence seems to be in conflict with the Sternberg's triarchic model adopted by the MOE. What benefits would children have if they enrolled in preschools that focus on developing multiple intelligence, since the nation's focus is generally on developing those with intellectual giftedness?
Yeah, but as you know that the government is also opening up to other things, that they're emphasizing more in terms of also the physical education part on sports and also in the arts itself. So the government is opening up. It's not like before, although they're still very strong in that. But remember, when we open up the intelligences, it also involves logical mathematical, that's math and science, linguistic intelligence is languages, and spatial, which has to do with algebra, geometry as well, to do that. So it is not that it's excluding the other intelligences, that this has to do with the academic performance. It is there, but we are exposing children to the other intelligence as well to do that. So if a child is kind of average in the academic, all right, and they'll go as far as they can go, and they can do that, but at the same time, they know that, okay, I may be average and not so good in my academic performance, but I'm really good in this, in the arts, or in music, I play the instrument very well, you know, I'm even in this orchestra, I can be at that level, all right, and so on and so forth. So now the university is opening up all these things as well. So we mustn't get stuck in the fact that, no, we are all must be academics. And you know, people who are very strong in academic solely, that means in their logical, mathematical, and their linguistic intelligence, but are not good or very poor in the interpersonal, intrapersonal, because they have no time. They must focus on doing their math, their science, their languages, whatever it is, that they don't bother and have not had the time to cultivate the other interperson, intraperson. So you may be very good, maybe even a scholar, but if you don't have these other intelligences, you will fail to live up to that promise because you're a scholar. The expectation is there. Because you can't get along with people, you can't get along with your boss, you can't get along with the peers, and nobody likes you. so that's unfortunate. Because if you're intelligent in an academic way, but you also have the other skills, then you can go much further, and that promise is there, So that's why it's important to look at children's different intelligences and not only what they should be, but what they really are. Because in the end, I ask parents, what do you really, really want for your child? Do you want a child to be stable, happy individual, very conscious, very strong self-esteem, confidence, able to get on with people, have good friends, good family life, able to work, and have certain skills as well, and music, so that when you are stressed out, music's always there, and people turn to music sometimes to relax, to calm down, to de-stress, and also body-kinesthetic intelligence, where actually if you do that, it will actually help you in your brain development as well. So we have to think in a more holistic way in terms of helping our children develop. But my main question to parents really is, what do you really, really want for your child? And that should gear you in terms of what you present to your child and what you expect of your child and how you would support your child.
So Dr. Khoo, any last parting words of advice for our parents tuning in?
Well, my last word is really for parents to see and ask yourself, what do you really want for your child? Do you want your child to be happy in the end, a happy child? Or do you want your child to be highly successful but very stressed and not that happy? And the other thing also for regard to multiple intelligences is to observe your child and see what is it that she's interested in. What is it that she spends more time on asking more questions about? And that might be one cue for you to kind of give her more exposure and more resources. And however, as the child is still very young, you might also provide different opportunities for different intelligences to emerge, if possible, and then to go with that, because some intelligences may come out later.
Well, thank you again for all of the words of wisdom tonight. And for all the parents tuning in, we're looking forward to seeing you at our next TV episode. Good night.
Good night.